acknowledge and make the statement that President Trump wanted them to make, and then they still don't get their White House visit and their aid, that would be really bad for our credibility. I think that's what he was referring to.
So you do acknowledge you spoke to President Trump as you indicated in that text, right?
If I said I did, I did.
And that after that conversation, you were still under the impression that the aid was contingent on these public announcements.
I did not get that from President Trump, but I was under the impression that absolutely it was contingent.
Well, you weren't dissuaded then, right? Because you still thought that the aid was conditioned on the public announcement of the investigations after speaking to President Trump.
By September 8th, I was absolutely convinced it was.
And President Trump did not dissuade you of that in the conversation that you acknowledge you had with him?
I don't ever recall, because that would have changed my entire calculus. If President Trump had told me directly, I'm not...
That's not what I'm asking, Ambassador Sondland. I'm just saying, you still believed that the security assistance was conditioned on the investigation after you spoke to President Trump. Yes or no?
From a time frame standpoint, yes.
Now, Ambassador Taylor also testified that, and Mr. Morrison, both of them testified, that you told them that President Trump said there was no quid pro quo, which you also included in that text message that you referred. But then you went on, and they had slight variations as to what you told them. But then you said that to Ambassador Taylor that President Zelensky himself, not the prosecutor general, needed to clear things up in public or there would be a stalemate. And Mr. Morrison recounted something similar. You don't have any reason to doubt that both of their very similar recollections of the conversations they had with you. Do you, Ambassador Sondland?
Let me break that down, Mr. Goldman. The text, as I said, about the no quid pro quo was my effort to respond to Ambassador Taylor's concerns, to go to President Trump. Apparently, Ambassador Taylor had access to Secretary Pompeo. He did not have access to President Trump. So I made the phone call. I said, what do you want? President Trump responded with what I put in the text. And then I strongly encouraged Ambassador Taylor to take it up with the Secretary. And he responded, I agree, when I said that. As far as the other part of your question relating to whether or not the prosecutor could make the statement or Zelensky could make the statement, I don't recall who told me, whether it was Volker, whether it was Giuliani, or whether it was President Trump, it's got to be Zelensky, it can't be the prosecutor. But that's what I relayed. Whoever I got that information from, I relayed that to, I believe, both Ambassador Taylor and to Mr. Morrison.
But as of September 9th, you understood, did you not, that President Trump, either himself or through his agents, required that President Zelensky make a public announcement of the two investigations that President Trump cared about in order to get both the White House meeting and to release the security assistance. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
That concludes our 45 minutes. I now recognize Mr. Nunes. Oh, okay. Why don't we take a 5 or 10 minute break?
Thank you.
All right, lots to unpack here, and we are going to do it with our contributors who have
Okay, so that
the testimony
is... Sorry about that.
Gordon Sondland.
That was the opening of the impeachment inquiry hearings with the Democrats' counsel questioning Ambassador Sondland. We're going to end it here and maybe come back and let the Republican side be heard here on the podcast. But for now, we'll end it.
Thank you for listening to Truman's Town Hall. Share this podcast with your friends and neighbors and subscribe today.